Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride. Looking to scale or launch your supplement or skincare brand? Eagle Labs Incorporated, based in Florida, offers full-service NSF-certified contract manufacturing of capsules, tablets, powders, liquids, gummies, and lotions. All of their manufacturing takes place in the USA. From R&D and formulation to packaging and fulfillment, Eagle Labs provides scalable, high-quality production that meets FDA and NSF standards. To learn more, contact Michael Law, Chief Commercial Officer at Eagle Labs at michael.law@eaglelabsinc.com, EAGLELABSINC, Michael Law, eaglelabs.com, or text him at 203-242-6417.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Road to Retail. Bruce, great to see you today.
Hello, Tracy. How are you, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. Excited about today's episode. I always love just you and I getting together and talking about some really interesting and great topics. But before we jump into today's episode, tell us about today's sponsor.
All right. Well, today's sponsor is The Scoop. SKUPE. So, running a retail business means making nonstop decisions: inventory, staffing, marketing, technology. The Scoop is the weekly newsletter designed to help you make smarter calls faster. Curated by industry experts, The Scoop delivers clear, trustworthy insights on what's working for small and mid-sized retailers today. Join 20,000 owners and operators who rely on it to stay sharp and ahead of the game. Subscribe at thescoop.co. That's thescoop.co. THESKUPE.co. All right. Check
Awesome.
that out, folks. It's actually a super interesting newsletter that helps people figure out how to stay ahead of the game, just like it said. Tracy. So the interesting thing about today's show is this show is a request. Kind of feel like an old-time DJ taking requests. A friend of the show, Ward Lennon, contacted me, and Ward said, you know what you guys should do? You should do an episode on how to prepare for a meeting and to be a value-added supplier to a retailer. Kind of like Tracy and us. Ward's a veteran of the CPG battles, and as we get deeper in our career, he said, "Boy, I'm a little surprised from time to time some of the stories I hear about people just not knowing what they're doing when they get involved with a retailer, whether that's an e-com retailer a brick and mortar, etc. So you know what? Tracy and I, kind of like an old DJ, we spin the requests. So here we go. Ward, thank you very much. So let me set this up just a little bit more. So regardless of your position within a company, whether you're a founder, the CEO, sales or marketing lead, your head of logistics, there are just certain actions and behaviors that will help you be a value-added supplier, to be a true expert on your accounts, and someone, frankly, your buyer won't dread meeting with when they see your company name and your name on their schedule for that day. So today's objective is to help you become one of those value added suppliers. And if you think you already are, congratulations, but hopefully you'll pick up a few more tips here that can help you be even more valuable. So, Trace, let's jump in. The number
Sure.
one thing with any meeting, whether you're meeting with a retailer or someone coming to, paint your deck, it's all about preparation. Talk to us a little bit about being prepared for meetings with your retailer, whether you're a new person taking over an account or if you've been on it for years. Talk about preparation.
And this seems to be a no-brainer, but people come into meetings all the time not prepared. So I mean, it seems like such an obvious thing that you've got to be prepared. But a couple of things I want to point out. One is, don't read your presentation. The buyer knows how to read. Know your presentation cold so that you get to a page and you're giving the highlights to the buyer or saying, hey, this is the key point to the slide. Don't read your presentation. The buyer can read. The other thing that you've got, if you're prepared, and only you are going to know whether you're prepared or not. Let's say the buyer gets into the meeting and says, hey, Bruce, I'm really running behind today. I've only got 15 minutes. You better know your presentation cold to say, okay, 15 minutes. Here's the 4 slides or the 4 points I want to make today. And you better know them cold, because if you don't, the buyer's going to know you're not prepared. So know that cold and be able to talk about your presentation and the 3 or 4 key points and cover those in 15 minutes if that's all you've got, because the buyer's running behind. Bruce?
Yeah. So another thing that I always like to do, and I encourage people that I work with to do the same thing, when I'm going to whether it's a retailer, a supplier, anything, if I've never been there before, I try to get there in the night before and find the building.
Great.
No one wants to hear that you didn't know that vendor parking was 8 miles away and there's a monorail shuttle to the headquarter building. Okay, it just shows you're a knucklehead. So if you've never been to a building before, you go find it the night before. I cannot tell you how many times where that saved my butt because either the door wasn't well marked or the buying team had moved to another building. And as Tracy just said, your meeting might be for 45 minutes, and if you're 18 minutes late because you don't know where the building is, that's on you. So
Right.
first off, your buyer is now stewing that you're wrecking their day. And if you have other people from your team with you, they're like, wait a minute, Bruce doesn't know where the building is. It's just a really bad start to the day. So
Sure.
Tracy, talk about the need to establish relationships throughout an account.
Yeah. So it's way more today complex than just knowing who your buyer is. You need to know, when with your retailer, who's in charge of logistics, who is the rebuyer that's placing your, turn orders. You need to know who do you submit your promotional plans to. You need to go, I think the message today is go deep. Make sure you know the names, email addresses, titles of everybody within the retailer that's going to touch your business. So if you, for example, don't know who to submit your promotions to, you're not going to be able to submit your promotion. So you've really got to know that. It's so important today to know everybody at a retailer that's going to touch your business and that you have a relationship with those people. And if there's a shipping issue, you know who to pick up and call and say, hey, I just want to let you know that we've had a problem and the order is going to be, a day late. I just wanted to give you a heads up. One of the key things we're going to talk a lot about today is that's so important is being proactive, not reactive. Don't wait to get the call from that, shipping or logistics person that says, "Where's your order?" You call in advance and say, "Hey, the truck was delayed. There was a snowstorm. So we're going to be a day or two late. Wanted to give you a heads up. Here's the PO number, and here's when it is going to arrive." Those are just key things to making sure that you've got a great relationship, uh, very deep within the retailer.
Yeah, and when Tracy and I interviewed, we've interviewed probably now about 15 buyers at some of the largest retailers in the country. And one of the things one of the people said was, if something goes wrong, don't hope we won't notice,
Yes,
because they've got so much data and so many people tracking so many different things. That is just not a great move. Like Tracy just said, if something's going wrong, pick up the phone, head it off, tell them what's wrong, why it's wrong, and what you're doing to fix it, and ideally when it will be fixed. But don't do that. The other thing to do, which can be effective, but you don't want to go bananas and go overboard, but as you build these bridges with the contacts within a retailer, take notes, whether it's old school, you write it down or you make a mental note. Look to build a little bit of the personal bridge. Over the years, you find out where someone's kid is in school or where they went to school or something that they really like. And every now and then, there was one guy who really loved the Steelers. And I saw a really interesting story on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I just put the link in an email and I marked it low priority so he didn't think it was something he had to do then. Actually, because it involved the Steelers, he probably opened it first. But just little things like that shows you're paying attention. But don't send someone 65 weird emails a day. They're not looking for a pen pal. But
no,
that can be helpful at times. It's still a relationship business. Tracy?
absolutely. So, Bruce, talk to us about how important it is to understand how each customer works. So each retailer is different, they have different strategies and all kinds of things. So talk to our audience today about how important that is and what do you really need to know about a retailer?
No, this is a big one. So even retailers, so let's just say grocery that are in the same sort of, same class of trade, they'll have different strategies. There's high low, there's EDLP, but there's also things you can pick up by paying attention, whether it's in press releases, quarterly reports, meetings you have across the retailer. What's their strategy? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they making a move where they're going to go after young families or mothers with kids under 10? Are they making a big push into emerging brands or totally fresh on the perimeter of the store? So make sure that you're up to speed on strategy changes. Again, you don't want to go in there and talk about something that was important to them 2 years ago, but they're like, didn't you read our quarterly report? We're now doing X. So you want to be on top. You also need to understand their pain points. So if a retailer, let's make this up, if they just opened 3 new DCs and you're hearing that there's troubles just while they shake things down, ask if there's things you can do to help. Should you avoid those couple of DCs for a few weeks while they work things out? Are they really having trouble with out of stocks? If they is your brand contributing to that? Do you work with the inventory people to see if you can place slightly bigger orders to help get that over with? What really irritates them and this can be at the account level or the person level, is paperwork errors or failure to get a promotion loaded correctly. Are these the things that can really set somebody off? Is it because you shipped to their key competitor first on day one of shipping a new item? But you just need to understand what's going to irritate them. And sometimes you have to. I mean, if you have an agreement that you're going to ship account X first and these guys are account Y and they're like, what's going on? You just say it. It's like, look, we launched with 3 accounts. We talked to you about it. You guys didn't want to be involved in the initial ship a year ago, so this is what we did. But understand what irritates them and head them off. And then the other thing that's really important, and this can take a little bit of digging, or if you're being represented by a broker or sales agent that really knows this account, it's always important to understand how your buyer is compensated, right? Because sometimes it's sales growth, sometimes it's head to head share against a key competitor, think like Walgreens versus CVS. It can be new items. It can be margin expansion. It can be harvesting more trade dollars from their supplier base. But these are the things that go into their evaluation, their bonus, and one day, hopefully, their promotion. And if you understand what those are and you're trying to help them achieve, be a high achiever in the eyes of their management, they're going to look forward to working with you because you get it. Tracy, did I leave anything out there?
No, just want to emphasize, when you said the pain points, and we've talked on the show a lot, and when we interviewed the buyers, they said, here's my across the board in generalities. The two things I hate is a brand that doesn't sell and a brand that doesn't ship.
That is
So,
true. That is very true because again, folks, if they have a hole in their planogram, it doesn't matter if your product's going to sell better. You can't sell what's not there.
correct.
So, again, we talk about working with your retailer, especially if you're a smaller firm and you might not understand fully how to keep up, launch in 400, 500 stores, not 2,000. It's
Right.
it's better to start small, win, and expand than start huge, fumble, and start, fighting fires for the next year and a half. All right, Tracy, let's talk about, knowing your numbers. Some people may represent and work for companies that have brands in a couple of different categories. Talk about the expectation of this
Yeah.
account lead.
Yeah, absolutely. So you definitely need to know what your sales rate is. So that means sales per week per store. A lot of retailers today have, you know, portals that you can go and check and you can get your movement. And then a lot of distributors, for example, sell their data. So you can buy that and look at what your retail distribution is at that distributor and with those specific retails. Know what your out of stock rate is, know what your fill rate is, because that is a key component for any retailer is to know that you're shipping, 90, 95% or better. So know all those things. Know your category data as well. What's going on in the category? Is it up or down? What brand is doing well? What brands are not? You should know that. And if that's through spins or Nielsen, whatever you subscribe to, if you're a bigger brand, know all those things. Some retailers, like I mentioned, have scorecards. Walmart has a scorecard. Publix, for example, they post their scorecards on a board in their lobby. So everybody knows who's doing well and not doing well. So really know your numbers, know how you're performing. And again, going back to being proactive, I'll give you a story. Was involved in a brand just recently that launched into a retailer on the West Coast. And they did a retail audit and noticed that a lot of the stores didn't have the product on the shelf yet. So what did we do? We contacted the buyer proactively and said, hey, we were in these 10 stores. We're not seeing the product. We want to make sure that the product is getting to the shelf. What can we do to help? So again, be proactive, not reactive. Hit retail. You should be in stores every week, checking how am I doing, even if it's your 3 or 4, local stores, just to see what your product looks like on the shelf. And if there's, out of stocks, then let the buyer know, hey, I'm been in these 3 stores and I'm not seeing our product. So
Yeah,
know
so
your numbers.
another thing to just build off of what Tracy said that's important. You got to know your categories, as Trace said, but you got to know what's happening, who's making it happen. And here's the key. You might be asked like about a competitor. Hey, why are they doing great? Or why are they doing terrible? I can tell you this. Don't talk poorly of your competition. It just
Yes.
makes you look bad. Talk about your brand, talk about the category, and then just keep it fact based. If one of your competitors is off, 12 share points over the course of a year, if you know why, say it, but don't say something like, well, it's because they stink. Maybe they've deprioritized it. But believe me, people remember that if you talk smack about your competition, just be knowledgeable, right? Because you don't want them registering that, geez, Bruce is kind of a competitive oaf. And why would he say that? It's just not professional.
I agree.
Okay, let's move along, Trace.
Absolutely. So talk to us, Bruce, a little bit about what we would call a top three brand, a go-to brand. What does that tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, this one's really important, and it goes back to what we've already been building up to. If your retailer uh, respects you as an individual and your company, that you guys get stuff done, you do what you say you're going to do, you do things on time, etc. When they have a question about the category or an opportunity, say someone drops out of a promo, are you getting one of those first couple of calls? Do they want to know what Tracy thinks? Hey Tracy, what's going on here in nutrition bars? Why has it gone bananas? And then, Tracy might know, well, there was that big story on Good Morning America. Oh, gosh, I missed that. Okay. But and this gets down to your credibility. Are you easy to work with? Do you do what you're going to say? And if you're not a top couple of if you're not in that top three phone calls of your buyer or something, why? What's the history that keeps you down? Now, sometimes it's just the gigantic companies, but most retailers know that some of the smaller folks are a little scrappier and they're a little more tuned in because they're dancing on the head of a pin, right? A gigantic brand can have a bad couple of quarters and they just shrug their shoulders. A little brand has a bad couple of quarters, they might be gone.
Right.
So, you're much more attentive, but that's my counsel. If you're not a respected advisor, officially or unofficially, to your buyer, you should be working toward that goal.
Absolutely. It's so critical. So critical. So we're going to talk a little bit about meetings. We've talked about how to prepare. Talk to us a little bit, Bruce, about okay, the meeting's over. Now what do you do?
Yeah, so this
That's
is one of
important.
my favorite this is one of my favorite ones, and I think if you do this well, it can really make a huge difference, especially toward becoming a real trusted advisor. So at the end of every retailer meeting, again, whether it's an e-com retailer or maybe it's even with your own DTC team, how did we do last quarter? Or a brick and mortar retailer, the first thing I always ask, whether it's I'm with people or myself, is I say, what did we learn? Okay, and I don't mean, oh yeah, Bruce presented this and Frank the buyer really liked blueberry. Okay, that's kind of important, but that's not what we learned.
Right.
What did we learn? So here's some examples. You're sitting out there and you hear that they're moving part of the buying team to another building. Okay, there's going to be some disruption. You hear that the category manager is about to go out on maternity leave. So that means getting things done with the same speed will be more challenging. You hear that there's not a lot of innovation in your category, so there might not be a new planogram this year. These are all there's a strategy shift. We're making a big push toward moms with young children, and we're going to expand women's health, and we're going to contract high-end skincare. These are the things you learn by listening and observing of what's going on that can really be key. Yeah, the fact that Frank liked blueberry, that's important, and that's still something you learned, but it's not the stuff that can really impact you. So be listening to the other things that are going on around you when you're in that retailer. And again, if you're working with a broker or a sales agent that's in that building all the time because they have multiple clients, I'm always asking them, I'm like, hey, what are you hearing inside XYZ? What's going on that we should be aware of? And you kind of train those people you work with. They're like, oh, Bruce is really tuned into like what's going on. Like, is there a personnel shift? Is there a new chief merchant coming in from a former rival? So there could be disruption as this man or woman puts their thumbprint on things. So I don't know, Trace. I feel very passionately about that
No,
one. Anything to add
I
there?
love it, Bruce. So I think that the key here for our audience today is be dialed in. One of the trends I've also seen is a shift to private label because of the economy. So a lot of retailers are putting a lot more focus and expanding their private label offerings more than they are branded. That's something you really should keep, needs to keep an eye, you need to keep an eye on. So just as an another example.
Yeah, so Tracy, moving along here, talk to the folks about you're the account lead with XYZ account, and an opportunity comes up. How do you leverage that opportunity and really position yourself that they're talking to the right person?
Yeah,
Kind
so
of like, how do you push your authority?
yeah, that's a great question. So as the account lead, you do have a certain authority that you need to leverage. So if your buyer calls you and says, "Hey, I've got some opportunity to expand your store count," or I've got a gap in my promotion. I had a brand that was gonna, be in this promotion or this event. They've had to back out. Wanted to know if would be interested in doing that. Leverage your authority and make that decision right there and say, "Yep, I'm your guy. I'm in." And then let your team know, hey, I had to make this decision. It was a short-term thing. It was an opportunity I thought we needed to take advantage of. It puts us in great position and stead with the buyer. So I went ahead and made this call. Of course, if you've got big decisions, you want to confer with your team, but don't tell the buyer, "Oh, Frank, I need to get back to you." If it's a simple thing, just make the decision so that that buyer knows in the future, oh, Bruce and Tracy, they can make a decision. I know I can count on them if I'm in trouble or really need something. So that's really an important point.
Yeah, and Tracy's exactly right, folks. I mean, you spend all this time trying to build bridges with your retailers, and we kind of refer to it as hanging around the basket, right? You're looking
Yeah.
for that. For all you basketball players out there, when no one boxes you out and the ball's sitting there, you just tip it in because you're ready and you're working hard. But it's really important if someone drops out of a promo and they can give you, say, part of a four-way or half a shelf on a themed end cap, man, you got to take it. Of course, you go back and check if the decision would be so big, it's like existential to your company. Of course, you're not a knucklehead. But if it's like, hey, this may make us tight on inventory, take the chance. I mean, I did that once with a very large retailer, and to this day, my former employer is still in that promo because the head merchant got pissed at a competitor and gave me a shot, and we took it. And we took it. So sometimes when opportunity knocks, you gotta answer the door and not say, I gotta go look for mom and dad. I'll be right back in a few minutes.
Exactly.
All right, let's move along.
Absolutely. So Bruce, talk to us about accountability.
Yeah, so this is another important one where, the men and women out there leading the account team, if your buyer calls you or an inventory manager calls you and there's something wrong or weird or late on one of your brands with them, you have to take ownership, right? You work for XYZ company. And I don't really care, and I can guarantee you the retailer doesn't care that it might be a shipping department snafu. You just need to say, "Hey, I'm sorry that this has happened, and I'm going to get on this right now. Can you just give me a little bit more information? What was the PO? What DC is this truck late for?" And then get involved. No one wants to hear that's not my job, or gosh, I can't believe those shipping knuckleheads, sent it to Panama instead of Panama City, Florida. I mean, you're all part of one team, and you will go up in the eyes of your account if you don't pass the buck. You say, I got the ball and we're going to get this solved. Anything to add there, Tracy?
Yeah, I think the best words you can say is, "Frank, thanks for letting me know. I'm going to get this fixed. Give me a couple hours and I'll be right back to you." That's what you need to say.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, Tracy. So up front, we talked about, a lot of suppliers only get a certain number of meetings a year. If you're a real big guy, you might have a monthly meeting, but if you're a small to mid-size, you might get line review and maybe a mid-year 30-minute talk. So talk to us about when you go in for that presentation, if you have like a marginal skew or something, how are you going to best use that time? What's your counsel there?
Don't fall on the sword for the dog skew. Simple and it's just it's not worth it because that buyer cares only about one thing. We talk about that on the show all the time. They care about that category growth. And if that dog skew is bringing down their category, there's nothing you're going to do or say that's going to save that skew because it's all about that buyer's category. So don't fall on the sword. Just say, hey, yep, this is a dog skew. You may say, hey, we've got this new innovation or we've got this, new flavor. Can we swap it out? That's worth asking. But in the end, don't fall on the sword for that skew. It's not helping you and it's not helping the retailer. So why try and save it? You're wasting your time and you can be talking about much more positive things like here's our new marketing program or here's our new innovation or we've got new flavors coming out or we're moving to a stick pack, some kind of new format. Those are much more important topics to be spending your time, especially when meetings today are so rare and hard to get.
So one of the lead buyers at a very large retailer located in Arkansas told Tracy and I when we interviewed them that the first thing they're going to talk about when he walks into a meeting is your dog skews. He
Mm,
said, I always have a list of who's in my dog pound. So don't talk to me about your brand. We're going to talk about each individual item.
yeah,
And as Tracy just said, if you go in there and you have a 40-minute meeting and you're going to fight to the death for a terrible skew that hasn't made hurdle in 2 years, one, you look like a knucklehead. Two, you are burning very valuable time. Three, you're not talking about the positive things and it's disarming and it shows you get it. Just go in and say, Tracy, before we even start, I want to let you know that our 24 count blueberry is gone. I know it's been a pain point. Thanks for hanging in there with us these last 2 years, but enough is enough, and we're damaging the category, and we have better ideas. So before we even get started, that's off the table.
yeah,
Suddenly, they're like, "Oh my God, these guys get it,"
yeah.
And in the end, it's their real estate. So barring that you've taken their dog hostage, it's probably gone anyway. So don't waste your time.
Absolutely. And the other thing then you can change the conversation to, okay, how much inventory do you have? When are we going to start the markdown? And then once the markdown is done at 50%, then we'll go ahead and pick up the rest. Again, it's all about being proactive. You already are walking into that meeting with a plan to say, Frank, I know this is a dog skew. This is what we're going to do. We're going to mark it down 25%, then we're going to mark it down 50%, and then what's left ship it back to your DC and we'll come pick it up.
Yep. Yep.
So, so Bruce, talk to us a little bit about how important it is to be asking the right questions when you're in that buyer meeting.
Yeah, so this is another one that Tracy and I have been doing this 30 years each, but interviewing these retailers just kind of confirms these things. And some of it you're like, yeah, I already knew that. Well, you might know it, but are you practicing it? So are you asking the right questions? We're going to talk in a moment about how long your presentation should be. But again, when you go in there, this is not a lecture, right? It's supposed to be a business building discussion. So get your buyer talking. Ask them, hey, here's the date. Here's how we're interpreting the data. What are you seeing in terms of these trends? Is this performing the way you had wanted it to? So you may have a list of questions that you want to put forward when you're meeting, as you're in the parking lot walking in or just before the Zoom starts. But based upon what you're hearing, the questions may start evolving. Like again, we talked about what did you learn? You may hear, you know what? I'm losing 4 feet. I'm losing 4 feet in the next planogram. Question would be, Man, that's interesting. How are you going to approach that? Are you going to approach getting rid of any double-faced SKUs? Are you going to get rid of, your bottom eight movers? Are you looking to exit a form, maybe effervescent or a blueberry gummy? God, we're picking on blueberry today. A blueberry gummy is just not what people want anymore. It was hot 3 years ago. But your questions need to evolve. Again, you're trying to understand how they're thinking and you're trying to help them solve problems and you're trying to stay focused on your mutual end consumer. In the end, Bruce and Tracy want XYZ retailer to help make it simple for Mr. Johnson to buy the product. Oh, that's what I need for my headache, etc. Tracy, anything to add there around the
No,
right question?
I think you hit it right on the nail right on the head.
All right. So now another thing around questions as part of our buying, I'm sorry, as part of our interviews with retailers, uh, one of the things they hinted at was, I have a lot of meetings, and there's a lot of meetings. We get to the end. I don't know what the supplier wanted. So Tracy, talk about being clear
Yes.
going in.
So I'm passionate about this one is knowing what you want out of the meeting and saying it right up front. It goes like this. Frank, great to see you this morning. Today, we're going to talk about a new innovation. We've got some new items for next year. I know you're going to be and this is knowing the retailer. I know your category review starts in October. Your decisions are in January. We talked about that during the last meeting. So, in conjunction with your timing, we're here to talk about our new innovation. We've got 4 SKUs, and we're going to talk about the features and benefits of those SKUs, and we're going to talk about the marketing support and then how we can work together to support the brand. But know what you want right up front. Or you say, hey, we have a new marketing campaign going to start, in September. We wanted you to know about it. We're going to start this. We've got influencers, we have an increased social media. We wanted to show you some of our new creative right up front, right out of the gate. This is what we're going to talk about today. And again, asking, okay, we're talking about new items today. Let's talk about how many SKUs you think you'd be interested in.
Right. So as Tracy said, it's really important to say right up front. So as Trace said, are you presenting your promo plan for next year? New items? Is it just a business update? Those are rarer and rarer. In the old days, you used to be able to have hey, how's it going? You know. And here's a tricky one. If you have to go in and talk about a price increase with your retailer, don't put it on the last page and then hope you can run out the door.
Yeah.
Put that thing right up front.
Man
And a
up.
lot of and a lot of times retailers have really good noses. They can smell if there's going to be a price increase piece of the discussion.
Sure.
And another thing that's really I find helpful over all these years, send a little reminder email a couple of days before. It's like, hey, Frank, coming in to talk to you about next year's promo plan and some innovation. See you Tuesday at 10. Just give them a little warm up because these people have a lot of meetings. We all want to think that, they're sitting around waiting for the next time Bruce and Tracy come in. No, no, they're not. They've got 10 other meetings that day. They might think that meeting with us is okay. And then the other thing, and we talk about this all the time and we always will, keep your presentation short.
Yes.
Keep it short. We heard from many, many retailers, the ideal length is like 12 to 15 pages, right? Again, it's a discussion, not a lecture. Tracy already said, don't read to them. They know how to read. Now, you can have a super long appendix if you want. Like, let's say you have a clinical study, you have head-to-head taste tests, reference that in your 12-page deck. And then if your buyer is like uber into data, say, and, hey, Sheila, attached in the appendix and on this flash drive is the research showing that people preferred this 4-to-1 over our previous formula. That's what I have there, Trace.
Absolutely. Nope. That's perfect. Perfect. So, Bruce, I'm a small emerging brand. Should I bring my whole company with me to the meeting so I can
Uh,
show how big I am?
Yeah, yeah, this is another dud move that companies of all sizes make. Again, part of our interviews with retailers, they said bring as few people as possible. Every single person in a meeting should have a role. No one should sit there like a potted plant. Don't bring your CEO and then have that man or woman drone on and on for 25 minutes about the founding of the company. It might be a super interesting story, but that retailer told you, I got 40 minutes. You've now wasted 25 minutes on telling us all about your CEO and how he got 4 hits in a baseball game on his 11th birthday. And the retailer wants to put a knitting needle through their eye because they just want this over. We also were told by these retailers that when they go into a room, if there's a lot of people and they didn't know there were going to be a lot of people, their antenna go up and they get a little bit defensive again. So don't bring an army. You're not showing them how important they are. They're kind of wondering why you'd waste all that money to bring all those people there. And some of these, if it's an in-person meeting, some of the meeting rooms aren't that big. So, there's like 4 chairs. So if you bring 7 people because you brought your ops guy, your CEO, your CFO, because they wanted to know what it's like at a retailer meeting, it's a car crash right from the beginning. Tracy, anything to add there?
No, it's just common sense, and you're right. Those meeting rooms, especially with the retailer in Arkansas, those are pretty small meeting rooms. So you don't want to just bring people just to bring people. In your mind, you may think, oh man, this is going to be great. They're going to think, oh, they're so important, or I'm going to look bigger than I actually am. You're really not. You're not fooling anybody.
Yeah, I had one senior merchant who I knew pretty well after I was at a meeting with a lot of people. Sadly, I tried to talk him out of it. At the end, he pulls me aside and says, God, you guys must not be that busy. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you brought like 14 people. It was more like 7, but it was still like 4 more than we should have brought. So I was like, message received. Okay, so Tracy, you already referenced this a little bit up front. So when you have this meeting, whether it's a Zoom, a Teams, or in person, how important is it to just confirm timing right when you get in?
Very important. So the first two things you could say, Frank, great to see you this morning. Hope you're doing well. We're going to talk about new items today or my promotional plan. Just wanted to confirm we're still good for the 30 minutes that we had scheduled. Ask that up front because Frank may say, I'm really running behind, Tracy. Can we cut this, to 20 minutes? Even if you're on a Zoom call. I was on a Zoom call, last week. Here's another point. Be cognizant and aware of your time. If you've got a 30-minute Zoom call with the buyer, keep it to 30 minutes and say that up front. Frank, thanks for hopping on the Zoom call today. I just wanted to confirm we have 30 minutes. Are we still good? Yep. And watch the clock, watch the time. Hey, Frank, we've got 5 minutes left. I just wanted to confirm, next steps. Here's what we're going to do. Send us the new item paperwork, or we're going to send you, this presentation. But be cognizant of the time that they have allotted and confirm that you still have that time that they've scheduled. Sometimes they run behind. That's part of what we talked about right up front, being prepared. Be prepared for Frank to say, Tracy, I'm running behind today. Can we knock this out in 15 minutes? That also allows you to then have another follow-up call. Hey, Frank, I know that you were kind of, short on time the other day. Could we set up another call? Or here's the information that we didn't get to. So use it as a positive to follow up and continue that conversation. You want to be in front of the buyer and top of mind with that buyer with meetings.
Yeah, and Tracy's second point there, I think, is really important. So if your buyer comes in and he or she, tells you they're clipping your 40-minute meeting down to 25, rather than be bummed out, you've already prepared, in your mind what you can cut and kind of speed through. But the silver lining is you got to understand 99% of people are good people. So they know they kind of pimped you by cutting you short. This opens the door to what Tracy said, a follow-up phone call a follow-up email where you can be, a little more specific. And 99% of the time, they know they kind of owe you one because they clipped you. So they'll give you another phone call to say, hey, Bruce, I read your stuff. Sorry we got cut short. Talk to me about that market research that talks about the power of this concept of your new innovation. And then you can get there. But confirming how much time you have right up front is critical because and early on, I made this mistake a couple of times. We're cooking away in a meeting and they're like, guys, I only got 5 more minutes. And it's like, oh boy,
Mhm.
now what?
Right.
All right. Well, let's press on here, Tracy.
Absolutely. So talk to us about meeting prep and sending an agenda and how important that is with a before a buyer meeting.
Yeah, yeah. So again, we talked about this a little bit, but some of the counsel that we've received from retailers and then that we've just learned over the years, they have a lot of meetings, folks. You're generally not the only meeting of the day. Okay. On the days they're seeing suppliers, they may have 8 meetings. Okay. And they all kind of blend together. So send a brief agenda and a reminder a couple of days before your meeting. Okay. Super short. Hey, Tracy, we're coming in next Tuesday and we're going to be talking about, you know, performance year to date and innovation for next year. And then we've given a lot of consideration to that promo you asked us to participate in, and we're going to talk about that too. This is also a good time to lay out in that cover email if you're bringing other people so they're not surprised. And again, don't bring 50. But if for some reason you really want to bring your head of marketing, or if you want to bring your logistics person because you're maybe going to do something that's more complicated than you're used to doing, do it. But lay it out up front so that when that buyer comes in and sees 3 people, he or she's not like, what the hell? They're like, oh, that's right. They said there'd be a couple of other people here. All right, let's go. So again, be organized. And in that email, also remind them what the purpose of the meeting is. Is it line review? Is it new promo? What's the ask? Don't get to the end of the meeting and they're like, Bruce, what do you want? Oh, well, we're going to sponsor a blimp and we want you to take our 65 new SKUs. Well, no. Oh, okay. So think that stuff through and get it out in front. All right, Tracy. So again, we're kind of beating on something that we both feel passionate about. Talk about the importance of swift, accurate, concise follow-up.
It's all about the follow-up, all about the follow-up. We can't emphasize that enough. Soon as that meeting's over, start working on your email. Here's what we talked about. Here's who's responsible for what. Here's the next steps. Here's a copy of the presentation for you if you're on a Zoom call. Whatever buyer follow-ups, send me, we talked about getting the new item submitted. Please send me the most recent new item form. Whatever it is, outline it and with specific action points, who's responsible and what are those deadlines. Oh, Frank, your category review, you're making final decisions in mid-June. So here's the new item form. So, and the presentation. Oh, by the way, we'll send you samples. Don't send samples beforehand. Ask the buyer when you're on the call or in the meeting, or if you're in a meeting, bring the samples with you. That's great. But a lot of meetings these days happen on Zoom. Hey, Frank, thanks for the time today. Is it okay if I go ahead and send you samples, or they may request the samples? Follow up, follow up, follow up. Who's responsible? What are the next steps and the timelines?
Yeah, Tracy's exactly right. A lot of times the two most important parts of the meeting are being properly prepared up front and being organized and knowing what you want. But then it's the follow-up because, it's kind of like if you think of a sports game, when the game's over, you kind of diagnose what worked, what didn't work. What do you still need? So take good notes, what that buyer wants and needs to make their decision. If there's something broken, like we've already talked about, articulate that you've diagnosed what happened and when you're going to fix it. But good notes. The follow-up is what really separates winners from losers. All right, Tracy, last point here, and it's another Road to Retail favorite.
Don't be needy. Don't place 9 calls to the buyer's assistant asking them how to fill out a new item form, or what does an MOQ mean, or what does a GTIN number. Figure it out. There's this thing called AI or Google, or ask your broker partner or sales agent, what does this mean? But don't be needy.
Yeah, and we've talked about, folks, is if you're not a CPG veteran, it's worth its weight to give strong consideration to hiring a broker or sales agent or someone experienced that really knows their way around the accounts you're trying to work with, because they just don't have time for hand holding, right? And then the other thing is, if something really important happens, good or bad, hey, we're having trouble with this shipment to you, or hey, um, we have this new item and one of our first three retailers dropped out. Do you want to be on day one ship? When it's really important, call. Okay, when it's really important, call. If it's kind of standard stuff, just send an email. But if it's really important, don't don't default to say, oh gosh, I texted them, I emailed them. I mean, they get a gajillion emails.
Right.
And they may or may not pick up your call, but everyone will usually clear their voicemail by the end of the day. So if there's something big, call. All
Right.
right, Trace, I think that covers it, buddy.
Boy, what a great episode. I hope you guys find this very valuable and enjoyed our time together, Bruce, and continue to follow us on Road to Retail on our LinkedIn page, Apple and Spotify. We post every Tuesday. And also we have our website, www.road2retail.com. So thanks
Yeah,
again
and
for
check
joining
out
me.
our friends at thescoop.co. All right, folks, good luck out there.
Thanks, everybody.